thought for the day. You will never have time for anything. If you want time, you gotta make time.
Welcome to 7 Minutes for Yourself. I'm Christina Aina, and I'm so glad you've joined me for what I believe will be 7 of the most enriching minutes of your day. Let's take this time to reconnect with ourselves and improve our well-being.
In today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself, we discuss 4 key habits to efficiently manage our time, saving time, and increasing productivity. Have a listen.
So let's run through those 4 habits in this video. Habit number 1 is to treat work sessions like you're going to the cinema. So if you're not one of the losers, unless you have genuine bladder issues, who needs to go to the loo during a film, you will have prepared yourself to be sat in a seat watching the film, immersed in that experience for maybe 2.5 hours without moving. And I think we should treat work sessions in order to enable us to get into a state of flow, of genuine immersion in our work in exactly the same way. The second habit is to batch tasks before you start. So batching is a very simple idea where rather than switching between, I'm going to water this plant here, and then I'm going to do a bit of reading, and then I'm going to do some work, and then I'm going to clean the floor upstairs, you try to batch similar tasks. So watering all of the plants at the same time all at once, which just generally makes life way more efficient. I think the question here is really just like, how do I implement batching day to day? And I think there are really 2 ways that I implement batching. The first is batching by project. And what I mean by that is that when I'm at work and I'm working on, let's say, something for my client, James, when I have all of the emails and documents open from James, it's way more efficient for me to do all of the work for James while I have everything there and open than it is to do something for James and then think, oh, actually, I really need to do that thing for Sandra, so I'll just switch over and close everything and then need to open everything for Sandra and then open everything again for James later when I go back to James. Batching by project effectively means do everything for James and then everything for Sandra. It sounds pretty obvious, but I think actually being really conscious of when you are switching between projects way too frequently is a hugely healthy mindset to adopt. It allows you to be much more efficient in how you're working, both practically in terms of not having to open and close different things for different projects, and also in terms of how your mind is operating. It is in the mindset of working for James. Do all of the work for James while your mind is focused and in that frame of mind, rather than switching between different projects. So for example, when I'm cooking a meal, I'll make sure I cook 2 or 3 meals worth of that recipe, because it doesn't take massively more time to cook 2 or 3 times the amount. But obviously, if I cook a new meal every single night, that takes way longer. And I also batch chores. So if I'm cleaning, I'll clean the entire house for 3 hours rather than doing bits and bobs here and there. So yeah, for me, batching is really all about just having a consciousness of doing more of this type of task or this type of project right now to avoid having to switch between things, losing focus, and overall just spending more time than I should be on those tasks. So there are 2 ways that I try, and I think anyone can try, to avoid doing work myself in order to have more time for other stuff. The first is to delegate. I think in a work context, it's so easy to be given a task to instantly jump into doing it, and 5 hours later you've finished. So for me, the habit is really just spend 5 minutes thinking before I jump into this task, are there other people who can more effectively do this than me? Are there people who could help, people with more expertise in this area than me? I really do genuinely find it so tough to delegate because I'm quite protective of my work. I really want the work to be high quality, but I think getting into a habit of considering options to outsource is absolutely critical if you want to make the most of your time. And the second is to use tech or other resources. And I think in that 5-minute period where you're just thinking, can I do this more effectively? It's worth thinking, are there tech tools that I could use? Are there other people who have probably done this task before who might be able to say, actually, there's this really useful Excel formula that will solve all of your problems. Spend a couple of minutes digging around for tools or asking other people who have probably done that task before for how they did it and what lessons they learned before diving in. And fourth and final habit is to multitask. And if you scour YouTube, you will find a ton of advice saying that multitasking is the least productive, most awful thing you can possibly do. And I generally do agree. I think batching and focusing on doing one thing at a time is absolutely essential to productivity. But I have one specific rule that allows me to multitask and save so much time every week, and that is to use my brain and my body at the same time. So if I'm using my body, doing something physical like walking listening to work or exercise or chores around the house, I am able to use my brain while doing those physical things. So that might mean listening to an audiobook or a podcast, or just thinking about my business. And similarly, if I'm using my brain to work, I can then use my body to do something physical, like standing at my desk. I even have a friend who has a treadmill that she walks on while she's on calls. I also have this spiky ball thing that I roll my foot on while I'm at my desk, just to improve flexibility in my foot and lower leg. And if I'm on a call where I'm not really talking much and not on camera, I might stretch for 5 minutes. Anything you can do really to get some kind of movement in your body while you're working, I think is a really healthy habit to get into. So yeah, if you're using your brain or your body, think, how can I use the other one at the same time?
That concludes today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Today and every day with your kiddo is a gift. Enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.